I'd like to call this meeting to order. Mrs. Bates, will you please read the statement?
Adequate notice of this regular meeting was provided to the public and the press on January 8, 2014, and was posted at the municipal building in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-6.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Here.
Councilmember Murphy?
Here.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Here.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Here.
Council President Lynch?
Here. Please join me with the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I ask for a motion to open the meeting to public comments. No, the agenda that you have is not what we're going to go with tonight. We're going to go, just this part, the public comments part is going to be now. So please, could I have a motion to go into public comments?
Move.
Motion made by Councilmember Rizzuto.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wetzel.
No.
Nope.
Kadesh, I apologize.
Right church, wrong pew.
Here you go. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is open to the public.
Harry Vernon. I have a question for Mr. Kelly. Is it ethical for people on the board to vote on a resolution if they have had contributions made to their political campaigns and then vote for that person's raise?
Could you say that again, sir? Is it ethical to do what? Or do you want me to read something?
You can step back. We'll...
So the way I understand your question, the answer to is it ethical is that it is not unethical.
It's not unethical?
No, sir. And, making a campaign contribution, the way I read this, because you contributed to someone's campaign, that's not unethical, it's not a conflict of interest, and doesn't require anyone to excuse themselves. If you think the way government is run in this state, it would be impossible almost to do that. So, I appreciate your question, but that's my answer.
Okay.
And thank you for writing it down for me.
Pardon?
Thank you for writing it down for me.
Anyone else from the public like to speak?
Good evening, Gary Martinson, Vernon. There's a resolution on here for appointing a registered municipal clerk. I wanted to congratulate the council and thank the council for doing that speedily and not, I only have a brief idea of what the person is like, but it appears like it's going to be a highly qualified person as well, and I think it's great that we're getting someone in place right away, so thank you. The second item I wanted to talk about is the bond anticipation notes resolution. There's three. It looks like you're rolling into one, and the one of them has to do with the MUA, if I'm not mistaken, and the sewers. And to the best of my knowledge, the MUA is still a separate utility. I realized that they couldn't get a bond initially because of the fact that they didn't have any users yet, they didn't have any track history. Now they have track history, they have users, and if I understood correctly, they're all signed up. So I think to roll this into the township bond is a bad idea, that you should stay with the bond that they have and that they should be trying to get a new bond instead. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Good evening, Jesse Palladini. I heard, and I could be mistaken, but I heard that there was some contemplation about linking the township, the videos of the town council meetings to Gary Martinson's Voices of Vernon. And I just want to say that I would object to that very strenuously, and I would oppose that and challenge that, because I don't think that the township website should link to a private forum, and particularly not to a hate forum that is just totally replete with inaccurate information, defamation, name-calling, false statements. I would have a problem directing people from a township website to such a private forum. It's on Service Electric Cable, and it's on his forum, so if somebody wants to see the township council meeting, they could see it in those two places. That's just one thing I wanted to say tonight. The other thing I want to say is that I'm very concerned because I came in today to pick something up from the acting clerk, and I chatted with her briefly, and what I'm about to say is not an indictment of the democratic process of circulating petitions, which I would, very much support. It is the democratic process. What I'm here to talk about is the actual process, and I want to be very clear because I don't want the reporters misquoting me. I'm not challenging the democratic process. I'm very happy that we have it. But my concern is that when we did the petition 4 years ago for the change of government, I know personally firsthand that our former mayor violated a number of statutes in the petition process. And I, for one, reprimanded her repeatedly, and 3 other people also did. And I wrote a sworn affidavit, so I'm not just making this up from the top of my head. And what concerns me is that I read a quote from her, and I read a quote, I think, from Mary Ellen Visciconti. If she's not the one who said it, I apologize. But I read that, they had gone in several days after handing in the initial petition. They went back several days later and turned in additional signatures. The law says that the petition must be handed in as one instrument, not 2 separate days. So my concern would be those additional signatures that were turned in. Were they all just put in together with the one petition? The way I read it, okay, so how can you tell now what came in when? It says one instrument. Second, no, I'm not asking you to respond to it. I'm just making that comment. Secondly, I know that when we turned in the petition 4 years ago for the change in government, I personally came down to turn it in to the clerk, and I was told that the clerk, who happened to be Angie at the time, because she was acting clerk then too, was on vacation. And I could not turn in the petition until she came back. Yet I understand when the petitioners came to turn in the petition, they did not give it to the clerk. And the law clearly states that they must give the petition to the clerk. I'm not insinuating anybody did anything wrong, but conceivably if the law says you must turn it in to the clerk, I question whether that's a valid petition because it was not given to the clerk. So what I'm saying is I would encourage the clerk to inspect that petition very thoroughly. And when I read that it'll be done in a day or it'll be done in 2 days, I don't see how that's possible. And the reason why I say that it should be inspected very thoroughly is because I know for a fact that certain people left petitions on store counters. And that's a violation.
Not true.
Please let the speaker speak.
In 2010, I'm not saying now. I'm just saying that they need to really inspect that petition carefully because we know that there have been violations. And to me, the law is very clear that you're supposed to give the petition to the clerk and you're supposed to give it as one instrument. So if there were multiple days that signatures were brought in, I think that's a violation. So I'm asking you to really carefully check that. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
My name is Michael Rubin, Highland Lakes. What I'd like to say is that I spoke to Jeff Parrott, and he explained to me that according to the method and discretion of the clerk, whatever the clerk does is okay. If the clerk decides to just look at 10 randomly and accepts it, that's her decision or his decision. As to the nature of bringing it one day, as long as it reaches the deadline, it's not an issue. The second thing is there are witnesses that claim that the mayor and some other councilman grabbed the papers, not the clerk. So I don't know if the witnesses can verify that, but that's what I've heard. That's the rumor. So that's another conflict of interest.
Anyone else like to speak? You already had us time to speak.
Pardon?
You only get one bite at the apple. Somebody else, please?
I need to clarify if someone was said wrong about me.
Gary, you have your chance on your forum to clarify everything. You already had a chance. Please, sit down. Anybody else like to speak? Motion to close public comments?
Move.
Motion made by Councilmember Rizzuto, second.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wetzel. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
How many are opposed? One?
That's it.
Okay.
I'm opposed because I believe that people have the right to come back if everybody else is finished and make an additional statement before it's closed.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, Acting Mayor's report?
Thank you, Mr. President. I've distributed to you tonight your annual financial statement, which is prepared by Elka Yetter, our CFO. It was reviewed by the auditor and is sent to the state. The only thing that is necessary is for you to take a look at it. It's great nighttime reading, and it'll put you to sleep very quickly. You had asked us to look into a grant for the band shell, and our Director of Community Affairs is looking to see if there are any grants out there for a band shell. She's also looking to see if there's any naming for our scoreboard. You had asked if we could find someone, put a name on the scoreboards for the field, and she's looking into that. We had a partial roof collapse in the DPW garage. We had talked about putting money into it in the spring. We definitely will have to put money into it and fix it. The good news is our salt, we received over the weekend 300 tons of salt, and we're waiting for another second delivery. Hopefully we'll have enough to get us through for the next week or so. We have completed our budget and have sent it to the auditor for his mathematical review, and we'd like to put it on the agenda for March 10th to introduce it if it's acceptable to you folks. And that's my report.
Thank you. I received today an email from Lake Panorama Association, Club Association, about the Kelly bill issue. I will be forwarding that email to you and to the mayor. Somebody from the town is going to have to respond to that email.
We're aware of the issue, and we will be
Okay.
forwarding and take care of that. Yes.
Ready. Thank you. Okay, at this point, we're going to go to the consent agenda. I know that this is going to we have a lot of resolutions here, so we're going to do each one separately. There's only three, it was a little bit of levity. Okay, Resolution 14-41, tax sale premiums to the township. If after 5 years a redemption has not occurred, the premiums go back to the township. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilmember Rizzuto. Can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Councilmember Wetzel. Any questions?
Actually, I have, something I mentioned before, and maybe I could have looked this up, but it just dawned on me that there's no names designated with this when we're doing this, and it really would be helpful, because how do we know there's no conflict? It's a lot and block. I don't know if you own it, Brian, not that.
I understand what you
But-
mean.
Would you vote differently? That was supposed to be funny,
No,
too.
but he would.
I know.
But then he shouldn't, so, but I'm just
Yes, that's
saying
a
is.
good point. It's a good point.
There's really no explanation, so,
That's a good point.
yeah.
So I'm a little confused about exactly if it hasn't been redeemed. In other words, has this person paid for 20 years on these tax certificates, and then 5 years have gone by and they haven't redeemed them or something?
They haven't paid the taxes in 5 years.
Right. You are right.
Okay, but I mean, a due diligence effort has
Right.
been made to contact whoever has these certificates, I take it?
Yes. Several times.
So they have been contacted.
Yes.
Any other questions?
Be good to know the names.
Okay. Can I have, can you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Davis?
Yes?
Councilmember Murphy?
I'll abstain.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Yes.
Council President Lynch?
Yes. Resolution 14-42, the appointing of a registered municipal clerk. This resolution will appoint Lauren Kirkman as municipal clerk starting March 3rd, 2014, for a 3-year term. Can I have a motion, please?
Motion?
Motion made by Councilmember Kadesh. Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilmember Wetzel. Any discussion? Lauren was able to come into the town center today. She was introduced to the other departments, and she also was made aware of what she's going to need to doing starting on March 3rd. She's very capable, and she's very qualified, and I think that we're lucky to have her. So at this point, I'd like to ask for a roll call.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Yes.
Council President Lynch?
Yes. Okay. Resolution 14-43. It's bond anticipation notes, authorizing the issuance of not exceeding $6,486,044 bond anticipation notes. The third renewal of 1107 and 1108, and second renewal of 1122 combined into one note to save on bond attorney fees and should provide us a lower interest rate. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Motion made by Councilmember Rizzuto. Can I have a second? I'll second that. Discussion?
I have some questions. Has the local finance board approved this application?
Local Finance Board doesn't have to approve this.
I know it doesn't, it's not legally required to, but has it been passed by them to see if it's okay?
Doesn't have to. What you're doing is we're rolling over pre-existing bans for 1 year. So it's not a requirement that has to go for supplemental debt approval or approval by the local finance board.
What's the projected savings in doing this?
Substantial. You're going to save between $2,000, $3,000 per on each of the three that we're rolling over, because we don't have to use the bond counsel to write each one, and because it's a higher amount, the interest rate should be lower. Band interest rate on the last one we went out for was below 1%. If we turned around and went for serial bonds and went out 20 years, we probably would be paying somewhere between 2.5 and 3% interest on those serial bonds.
For 3 years, we pay only interest, right?
But we can pay, if we want, interest plus, but we're only required to pay interest on the first 3 years.
But-
And the bond itself has to be paid within 10 years.
But 2 of these were originally done in 2011, and this is 14, so after that, well, we will have to pay principal as well.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct? But then I don't understand why we're not making them into permanent bonds.
Because they would go out for 20 years and you'd pay 2.5 or 3% interest. If it's a ban, you're going to pay now under 1% interest. And we are paying some of them down. We're reducing these by about $200,000 in payments, in principal.
Okay. As we had a slight discussion beforehand, one of these is for the MUA.
One of these is for the purchase from United Water for the MUA facilities. The town owns those assets. MUA has no assets, nor can they go out and bond themselves because they have no assets. The town owns the assets that were purchased. They're purchased in the town's name, and they still own them.
It seems to me, though, that eventually the township should be repaid by the MUA.
They will be.
But-
As the MUA generates funds, they will pay back those bonds, plus the money that was laid out, if you remember back when, where we were paying for, to the county for, I forget the number, 800, 900,000.
Right.
That money also will be paid back from the MUA.
On the other hand, there is no tracking device or wording in this particular resolution that either states that or states any of the particulars or details as to how and when that would be repaid.
I don't think that's necessary because the bonding is completely with the town. There are separate agreements, which are not part of this resolution, which spells out that relationship. This is the town's portion, town's liability, that they must refund these. If they don't refund these, and the $6 million doesn't get refunded, you are in default of your bank obligations. If you do that, you won't be able to borrow a nickel from any of the banks and any money going forward, but you will be in technical default.
Shouldn't those other agreements be referenced in this particular resolution?
One says ordinance 11-22, which was the original ordinance back in November 14, 2011, when the original ordinance was prepared and set up. And that's in section 3.
Well, yeah.
Am I mistaken, if we were to have serial bonds instead of bans, they last for approximately 20 years?
Yes.
There's no mechanic to pay that back early. Once you take a serial bond, you have to pay it in 20 installments.
The banks don't really want you to pay it back early. What they're looking for is a long-term payout. If you remember the 13 million
Right.
that we have in the long term, we don't get to open that up until another 5 or 6 years because they want a steady stream of payments. So there's a period of time which you cannot pay it back.
So if $6 million fell out of the sky, we wouldn't be able to put that
You wouldn't be
towards-
able to, if we had 6 million right now, we said, look, let's go apply it against the 13 million, we couldn't do it. Because there's a covenant in that bond agreement that says you can't pay it back early.
Like a mortgage for your house. Otherwise, the lenders would not.
They wouldn't touch it.
They wouldn't touch it because they're not about to lend you money and have the bond called in 2 years before they begin to reap any benefit, so.
And
that's
to
why
Councilmember Cage's point, we are the fiduciary for
That's
the
correct.
MUA.
We own those
We own the
assets.
assets,
We own the
So-
assets, and we are the guarantor of
so we are
those.
essentially saving money by doing this.
We're saving money for the town in the following, the bond council money we're saving, and we're saving interest.
If the MUA were to somehow go out, we would still be responsible for this.
We'd still be responsible for this, and what we would do is we would set up a thing called sewer utility department, like a finance department or an animal control department. We would do the billing and collection, and we would maintain the facilities similar to what MUA is doing right now. MUA maintains the facilities that we own. They also bill and collect, and they handle all the problems that we don't see. It's a separate authority.
And currently, we pay the bond council on each one of these,
We would, if we
and we
did it
would only
separate.
be paying on one at this point, too.
That's correct. What we tried to do is roll all the bands into a common date to try to reduce the bond council fee.
On the other hand, there's a matter that maybe you can explain it, but essentially, when I was on all the sewer studies way back in the 90s, the state law at that point, and I think it still remains the same, says that the users are the ones who should pay the debt, that the taxpayers should not be bearing
That's
this
correct.
debt.
That's exactly what's happening here, is that the taxpayers are not paying down the $3.8 million. The users of the sewer authority are going to pay down the $3.8 million.
And how is that differentiated?
Differentiation from what? I'm sorry.
If the taxpayers are paying the debt,
They don't, but MUA doesn't have the ability to raise $3.8 million.
I understand that, but still, the taxpayers are ending up footing the bill.
They're footing the bill but it's a township asset.
The money
Township
will be
owns it.
coming back to the town, Dan.
Can I ask? Dan?
Eventually.
So let me get this straight. The town, we purchased the MUA facility. but
No, we
Vernon,
purchased from United Water.
We purchased from United Water the MUA facility.
No, try it again. We purchased facilities from United Water.
United Water.
We created an authority at the same time to run those facilities.
Right. Now, if our MUA was able to get credit at that time on their own, they would have purchased it?
Possibly.
Okay. Which means, so the facility we purchased is strictly for the MUA and is supposed to be paid for by the users of the MUA?
Yes, but you've changed the question. Try it again. The town purchased from United Water,
Right.
which they own as assets. They set up a thing called the Vernon Authority to run those assets,
Right.
period. And as part of running those assets, they are to generate profits or generate excess or surplus, whatever word we want to put in there, to pay back to the town for the monies that the town has laid out.
At what point will the MUA take possession of this facility?
I don't have an answer for that.
But but the end result is that the MUA take possession of that facility?
Possibly.
Okay. So
Not probably, but possibly.
But that's really what the goal is. The goal is for it
To
to
have
be
them stand
autonomous,
on their
for them
own.
to
It may be 5 years,
get
10
up and
years.
running on their own.
Correct.
Where they're totally separate, they take their everything and they run their own
Sure.
show. If these three bonds are rolled in together, how do you possibly begin to figure out, how do you separate what is the MUA's responsibility and what is the township? And I know what you're going to say is, but the township owns it. That I understand. But if, let's just say in 3 years, the MUA happens to become self-sufficient, they're up and running, and they're going to take this over, how do you now separate this out? How does it become, at what point does the township relinquish their responsibility from having this facility or this bond on their backs?
When it's fully paid off.
So even if $6 million fell out of the sky, like Brian said, and fell into the MUA, what you're saying is they would
Yeah.
just keep paying and Vernon would keep...
If 6 million fell out of the sky, we could turn around and use 3 million of it to pay off the MUA's bond. We would then pay the other 2 bonds off. In our accounting system, we account for the 6 million in 3 different categories, the 3 sections that you see here, and it's listed separately. So we know that the Section 2 is the fire department, Section 1 was the DPW, and Section 3 is the MUA portion.
But if
And
they're
we
all rolled-
maintain separate
If
records
they're
on
all
each of those.
rolled into one bond,
We separate that, we separate those in our accounting system, and we know what MUA's obligation is.
When you get the total amount of money, it's allocated within the 3 areas.
That's correct.
It's basically setting up
3 separate
3
accounts.
separate accounts, and
I know
that's
it-
how you're charged.
I know it all sounds very simple, but it certainly is probably not as simple as it sounds, because just taking the MUA, what should be the MUA responsibility, but what is the town's, because the town signed for it, bought it, it just doesn't, it doesn't seem correct for it to just be rolled into bonds that are actually a fire truck and other improvements for the DPW.
Well, let me try it again. Those assets
could
for
try it
3
again.
million aid are the town's assets. They're not MUA's assets. In our book and in that financial statement that I gave you,
And-
you will see in there a liability for 3 million aid. It's on the town's books, and the town must.
And I understand they're MUA assets, but, or they're township assets, but they should be MUA assets, and all,
Not unless MUA is going to pay us 3 million aid for them. I ain't giving those assets away, and they don't have the ability to pay us.
and I know what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. It's a township asset because we purchased it.
Correct.
But it should be an MUA asset if they had the money.
If they had the money, we'd give them the whole bill and
But
say,
it should,
go pay it.
but it should still be kept separate.
It is.
Well, not if it, to me, and as Dan said, and I spoke with you at length today, just so
Sure.
everybody knows, I did speak with Bill at length today over this, all this bonding and the percentages and everything else. And as Dan did say, there is nothing other than referring to the original ordinance 11-22. There's really nothing in here saying, it doesn't say MUA, it just says, it's Vernon Township.
Because, let me try it again for the third
You
time.
could keep
I think
It's
that
not an
the
MUA asset.
I think the question's been answered, actually. I don't think that it's answered to your liking.
I don't, actually, to my liking, I don't know that it would have been answered to a lot of people's liking, because,
Okay?
but,
These are basic accounting techniques, accounting principles. What's happening here is not something that's unique to Vernon.
Well,
The
it's-
establishment of the establishment of an amount of money that's based upon various programs in order to gain an economy of scale when you're borrowing, I think is smart financial management. Why would you want to handle each one of them separately? No lender would go after it. No lender would provide any funds for you.
you don't know that.
Yes, you do.
You don't know that. They've obviously purchased them once before. The other thing
I
is,
think
if
you
the
really-
interest
I think you
rates
need
go
to
up,
do
Bill,
some studying in finance, ma'am.
I really think you should be a little bit more respectful to everybody.
I'm
Mr.
answering a question.
I didn't ask
Respect is
you a
something that
question.
you earn.
I didn't ask you a question.
Bill,
No.
can I ask another question?
No, Gene was first.
If the interest rates start to rise.
Yes.
Then you'll be looking at permanent bonding, is that not
If
correct?
the interest rates get above 1%, 1.5%, 2%, yes, we definitely would look at serial bonds.
Right.
But when the interest rates are below 1%, it makes no financial sense to do.
And
that.
what are these going to be at?
We don't know. They go out for bids. The
What-
last ones that
what
we
do you
went out
project?
for were below 1%.
Okay.
What would it cost to separate Section 3 out?
$2,500 to $3,000.
I move the question.
And
Because what we'd have to do, just to fully answer your question, Dan, what we'd have to do is go back to the bond council and have them rewrite
I move the question.
Hang on a second.
it.
Okay, there's a motion to move the question. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I believe you need a second.
Okay, is there a second? To go continue with the vote. Is there a second?
Do you want to continue the discussion? Or you want to vote on it? Continue the discussion.
Okay.
I
Any
would
other
like to
questions?
see- I would like to see Section 3 separated out and specifically identified as an MUA.
Dan, please, it is not an MUA obligation. It is a town obligation. I've said it 5 times. MUA has nothing,
Reference.
but MUA has nothing to do with rolling over that bond.
Do we need to have a resolution for you to put this technically, put this in a different line item in the accounting practices?
You don't need one, but you're sure welcome to do it. I mean,
Okay.
yes, that will be done tomorrow morning,
Okay.
but we certainly can do that.
Are you amending
Yes,
the
sir.
motion?
I'm amending the motion for the CFO, Elka Yetter, to create a different line item to specifically state the obligation of the sewer authority. Can I have a second of that?
what, are they separating this out or just adding a line to
The separating the obligation of the town versus the MUA as far as the sewers authority's obligation. Can I have a second?
Well, I'm.
Okay,
But-
I'm trying to work with
I
what
know
you're
what you
saying,
are,
and you're
but-
not
but-
even seconding something
And
you're
this is-
asking for.
And this is what I'll tell you also, Mr. Zuckerman, I did take your advice, and I called Mr. Kelly and to question him on it, and Mr. Kelly's not the bond counsel, so he really could not answer
Mm-hmm.
the questions for legality purposes. Is
Legality
that not
is,
correct, Kevin?
it's not a question of legality. We're down to a question of, do we refund bonds which the town is obligated for, or don't we? It's that simple. If you don't want to refund the bonds, that's your call. But I'll
What is
tell
the
you,
consequences if we don't refund these right now?
you'll be in default on
Okay.
the bonding issue, or when these come due in about a week or so. We usually have a week's lead time. If they're defaulted, you won't be able to borrow a dime, because any further obligations, when the credit rating looks at you and sees that you defaulted on your bonds, you're virtually done.
So what do you suggest, Mr. Kelly?
That we do this.
In what
With the-
manner?
Well, there's.
The motions that were made to move the question and the motion that was made to separate them did not go through. At this point, if there aren't any more questions, I'd like to call the roll.
So you've taken it off the table to separate it?
I just asked it, nobody seconded.
And did you not hear that I was questioning? I was still questioning.
There was- you
Mr.
can't
Zuckerman.
discuss it
That's
unless
okay.
there's a
That's okay.
second.
Do what you want, that's fine. Do what you want.
I'd be glad to entertain a notion to separate this out and have a separate bond. Or
That
separate
motion,
ban, excuse me.
that motion was made and did not pass. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kadesh?
No?
Councilmember Murphy?
No,
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes?
Councilmember Wetzel?
From an economic standpoint, there's no question about it, yes.
Council President Lynch?
Yes. Motion's been adopted. Resolution's been adopted. Ordinance 1402, an ordinance of the Township of Vernon, County of Sussex, State of New Jersey, authorizing the purchase of various equipment and repairs in, by, and for the township pursuant to NJSA 4056-1, and that such sum so appropriated shall be raised from capital investment fund of the township. The sum of $20,000 is appropriated to pay the cost of the improvements and acquisitions of e-ticket software and hardware for 8 police cars. Can I have a motion, please?
I'll make that motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, now I'd like to have a motion, okay, open to the public? Comments from the public? No comments? Please motion to close public comment section.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Rizzo, second by Councilmember Wetzel. Council discussion.
Was this included as part of the temporary budget that we passed?
No, it's part of the capital investment fund.
Well, but then,
It's not, it's part of our capital investment that we already have set aside.
so we already voted on it.
This is part of our capital investment fund that we voted on, yes.
But my point is, we haven't passed the budget yet.
Can I help you? Can I help you?
Go ahead.
Capital budget is a plan. For the $20,000, we already have funds from prior monies that we're using. While it's listed in your capital, when we talked about it in the discussion, it was one of the items that we were going to fund. We are now funding it. The money is already in there. It's not new money.
Bill, all I'm asking is, did we okay that in the temporary budget?
No, you don't have to, because your temporary budget was operating,
I think there
not capital.
was, we questioned the word, you questioned the word down payment,
Yes.
and Kevin changed the wording to eliminate down payment.
We took-
No,
yeah.
I understand that, but that's not my question. My question is, do we have to wait until the budget is passed, approved, or is it included in the temporary budget?
No.
I know we discussed it at our meetings.
Temporary budget is only for operating expenses. There's a capital, you already have the money, you've
All right,
provided
oh,
the
I
money.
see what you're saying, okay, fine.
Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Councilmember Caden?
Yes.
Councilmember Murphy?
Yes.
Councilmember Rizzuto?
Yes.
Councilmember Wetzel?
Yes.
Council President Lynch?
Yes. Okay, council comments. Mr. Wetzel.
No comment.
Mr. Rizzuto.
No comment.
Mr. Kadesh.
I'll follow suit, no comment.
Mrs. Murphy.
Hello. Just wanted to make a comment about the water park. When the presentation is made, what I would request is that maybe some type of advertising go out just to alert the public, other than the agenda, to let them know that the presentation would be made. This way, if somebody was interested, they're not just relying on the township website. I think it would be an important issue for people to come learn and then make their own decisions.
How do you suggest we do that?
Newspaper? They're usually eager to, find information to print about. I mean, it's,
Okay?
Remember, you have
We're going to have
two-
to pay for it, that's
Well,
why.
remember, you have two sections. You have the introduction, where we give you the presentation, then you have the public meeting in April, where the public can come and ask
well,
questions.
originally Andy Mulvihill was going to be here today to do the presentation on the pilot programs, but that was postponed. So that's what I'm saying. I think it would be of interest for residents to come and hear that. And yes, even if it does cost, because what would you prefer, people?
I have no
Yeah.
objection to what you're saying.
I'm sure that,
I didn't know what avenue you were speaking of, that's all.
Well, I'm sure that if there was a comment that was made to the paper, it wouldn't even have to be a cost. It wouldn't be something, it would be a story that, that would be published for free.
Okay.
The other thing is, in December, when there was the vote on that Jesse Wolosky lawsuit, where the town paid. What was that lawsuit for? That was an Oprah lawsuit, and I just, I know it was Oprah, I just don't know, I never looked to see, I didn't want to bother Angie to, Oprah. I just thought somebody here might remember.
Jesse, as I recall, had filed an order to show cause because he believed that we did not adequately respond to an Oprah request he made for various employment records. And as it turned out, he was technically correct in some respects with his suit, and at some point in time, it became my opinion that he would have prevailed even though he hadn't at that point in time, and I thought the best way to handle it would be to provide him the documentation we had and his attorney, and limit the amount of money that his attorneys would be paid. That's the best I recall.
Employment information?
Employee records, it was, I'm referring in a.
This is going back to the Social Security thing, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. I was just
So
about to
this-
say that, so we can be really accurate. It was, we had 6 or 7 people requesting in one form or another those types of records. They were produced, as we all know, and people found, I guess, everybody but Jesse Woloski found the responses to be complete, if not more than complete, if you know what I mean. And so Jesse, feeling that his were incomplete, he filed a separate lawsuit against the township. And ultimately,
got-
that's the case,
His
that-
attorney ultimately got another $11,000.
as opposed to a lot more, and that,
But,
because when we thought, when we saw where this was going, because he lost in the beginning, and he took an appeal to the appellate court. And while the case was in the appellate division, I recommended to the council that we settle and we give him the records, because we by then had found that some existed. He was right, and so we did. We cut our losses and we made the best deal that we could.
and the only other thing I have is I was reviewing the bills list, and I noticed that there was a payment on there for actually Kelly and Ward, and I did check with Mr. Zuckerman today, because it actually stated that one of them was the retainer for you for April of last year. And I just, of course, I questioned Mr. Zuckerman, I'm like, why are we paying Kelly and Ward for a retainer fee in February of 2014 for a retainer from April of 2013? So I'm just mentioning that I don't know that if anybody else looks at it, but when I see, $10,000 being paid out almost a year later, and I don't know if you don't bill retainers, I don't know if the bill got lost, but I mean, that's something of a concern. I mean, I would think that the bills should, if it's a retainer especially, it should be paid.
Let me help you. In the retainer account, I believe is $60,000 a year for Mr. Kelly. He never gets paid over $60,000 as a retainer.
I'm not questioning that.
Whenever the timing of it is.
I'm not saying that it's overpaid. What I'm saying is.
I don't want to leave the impression that we're paying him in addition to.
No.
We're not.
And I did not infer that. But what I'm saying is in February of 2014, we were paying Mr. Kelly's office for April and December of 2013. That's all. That's all.
I have no comments. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Good night.